I was 23 years old when I first climbed into an F-86 Sabre. Fresh out of flight school, cocky as hell, thinking I knew everything about air combat because I'd read the manual and logged my hours. They shipped us to Korea in the fall of 1952, and we thought we were hot stuff. Most of us had never seen real combat. We'd heard stories about the MiG Alley, about the Chinese and Soviet pilots flying those silver MiG-15s across the Yalu River, but it all seemed distant, abstract. I grew up in Ohio, small town outside Cleveland, joined up in '49, right after high school. My old man had flown bombers over Germany, came back with a chest full of medals and nightmares he never talked about. I thought flying fighters would be different, cleaner somehow. You're up there alone, just you and your aircraft and the enemy. No civilians, no cities burning below, just skill against skill, machine against machine. God, I was naive. They stationed us at Kimpo Air Base, and within a week we were flying combat air patrol missions up near the Yalu. That's the river that separates North Korea from China, our boundary line, the edge of where we could chase them. Beyond that river was Manchuria, and Manchuria was off limits. The MiGs would come screaming across, hit our formations, then run back across when we got on their tails. Safe, untouchable. It ate at us, that river, a line on a map that meant life or death. My first real dogfight happened on a January morning in 1953. Temperature was maybe 10 below on the ground, worse at altitude. We were flying top cover for a bomber strike, 4 Sabres in finger 4 formation. Captain Hayes was our flight leader, good pilot, steady hands. I was flying wing, trying to keep my position, trying not to look like the rookie I was. The warning came over the radio. Bandits, 12 o'clock high, coming down fast. I looked up and saw them. 8, maybe 10 MiG-15s, silver specks catching the winter sun as they dove out of the clouds. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. This was it. This was real. Hayes called the break and we scattered, each Sabre rolling into the fight. I pulled hard, felt the G-forces slam me down into my seat, felt my vision narrow at the edges. A MiG flashed past my canopy, close enough that I could see the red star on its fuselage. I kicked rudder, brought the nose around, tried to get my gun sight on him. Gone. He was already gone, climbing back up into the sun. The radio was chaos. Call signs, warnings, curses. Break right. I'm hit. 2 on your 6. Watch your 6. I was turning, always turning, trying to keep track of where everyone was, trying not to die. The MiGs were fast, faster than us in a climb, more maneuverable at high altitude, but we could outturn them down low, and our dive speed was better. If you could get them into a turning fight, you had a chance. I got on one MiG's tail, maybe for 5 seconds. Squeezed the trigger, felt the Sabre shudder as the .50 caliber guns opened up. Tracers reached out, fell short. He broke hard left, and I followed, pulling until I could hear the airframe groaning, until my G-suit was crushing my legs, and I was grunting against the pressure, trying to keep the blood in my brain. Then another MiG was on me. I saw the tracers go past my wing, glowing yellow-white, and I broke so hard I nearly blacked out. Lost sight of both of them. Suddenly I was alone. The sky empty except for contrails and the distant dots of aircraft still fighting above. My fuel gauge was already showing half empty. We burned fuel fast in combat, all that afterburner and hard turning. I called out that I was Winchester, out of ammunition, and headed south, back toward the base, my hands shaking on the stick. It was the randomness that got to you first. You could be the best pilot in the squadron and still catch a lucky burst from a MiG you never saw. You could do everything right and still die because your wingman wasn't watching his sector, or because your engine flamed out at the wrong moment, or because the enemy just happened to be in the perfect position when you came out of a cloud. I saw Jimmy Kowalski go down on my 5th mission. Good pilot, better than me. We were tangling with a formation of MiGs near Sinuiju when his Sabre just came apart. Later, they said it was probably a structural failure. Pulled too many Gs, overstressed the airframe. But in that moment, all I saw was his aircraft disintegrating, pieces spinning away, and no parachute. Just gone. His wife was pregnant. I'd seen the letter he was writing that morning. The MiGs learned fast, and so did we. Early on, they'd try to dogfight us, turn and burn until someone made a mistake. But by 53, they were using better tactics. They'd come down from altitude in pairs, make one high-speed pass, then zoom back up before we could react. Hit and run, smart. We called them trainers when they were flown by Chinese pilots, newer, less experienced. You could tell by how they flew, hesitant, making predictable moves. But the Russian pilots, the honchos, they were different. Smooth, aggressive, no wasted movement. Those were the guys who'd fought over Berlin, who'd logged more combat hours than most of us had total flight time. Fighting a honcho was like dancing with death. I got my first confirmed kill in March, a MiG-15 that made the mistake of trying to outturn me at 15,000 feet. I stayed with him through 3 full turns, each one tighter than the last, waiting for the shot. When it came, I put a burst right into his engine. Saw the smoke, saw the flames, saw him punch out. His chute opened, and I watched him drift down toward North Korea, toward whatever was waiting for him on the ground. They threw a party back at the base, painted a red star on my saber. Everyone was slapping my back, buying me drinks. I smiled and laughed and pretended I felt something other than sick. That pilot I shot down, he was probably my age. Probably had people waiting for him somewhere. Probably thought he was fighting for something important, just like I did. Now he was either dead or captured, and I was the reason. But you don't think about that. You can't. You just fly the next mission and the next, and you try not to remember that each one might be your last. The routine becomes your life. Briefing at 0500, pre-flight checks, taxi out to the runway with your wingman. The moment when you light the afterburner and feel that massive kick of acceleration, the nose coming up, wheels leaving the ground, climbing out over the Yellow Sea, checking your weapons, testing your radio. Then north, always north, toward the Yalu, toward Mig Alley. Some days we'd patrol for an hour and see nothing. Other days they'd come at us in formations of 20 or 30, more MiGs than we could count. Those were the days that aged you. You'd land back at Kimpo with your fuel gauge on empty, your ammunition spent, your flight suit soaked with sweat despite the cold. We lost pilots. Not every mission, but regularly enough that you stopped getting close to the new guys. Lieutenant Morrison, Captain Blake, Major Henderson, all gone within 2 months. Some ejected and were picked up by rescue choppers. Others weren't so lucky. There was this superstition that developed. Don't fly mission number 13. Don't fly on Friday the 13th if you can help it. Don't talk about going home until your orders were literally in your hand. Stupid stuff. But when you're living on the edge like that, you grab onto anything that might keep you alive. The Yalu itself became an obsession. That damn river, that invisible line we couldn't cross. We'd be chasing a damaged MiG, had him dead to rights, and he'd just barely make it across and we'd have to break off. Watch him limp home to his base in Manchuria where we couldn't touch him. It was maddening. Some pilots crossed anyway. Not officially, never on the record, but everyone knew it happened. They'd follow a MiG across the river, get the kill, then come back and claim it happened on the Korean side. Command didn't ask too many questions as long as you weren't stupid about it. I crossed once, just once. I was so focused on the MiG in my sights that I didn't realize I'd gone over until I saw the city below. Antung, Chinese territory, clear as day. I was maybe 30 seconds past the border, but it felt like forever. Got my shot off, saw the MiG start smoking, then I broke hard and ran for the river like the devil himself was chasing me. Never told anyone. Didn't count it as a kill. Just tried to forget it happened. It was in June when things changed for me. Not a specific mission, not one moment, but an accumulation of them all. We'd been flying 2, sometimes 3 missions a day, and the fatigue was crushing. You'd climb into the cockpit and realize you couldn't quite remember the pre-flight checklist. You'd see a glint of sunlight off a canopy and your hands would be on the stick, braking hard, before your conscious mind even registered what you'd seen. We were becoming machines, reactions without thought, flying without feeling. I was on approach to Kimpo after a routine patrol, nothing exciting, when I saw a Sabre ahead of me with his gear up. Landing gear up, coming in for a landing. I called it out on the radio, trying to warn him, but he didn't respond. Just kept coming, kept descending. And then he touched down on his belly in a shower of sparks and grinding metal. They pulled him out of the cockpit. He was fine physically, not a scratch, but his eyes were empty. He just sat there on the tarmac while the meat wagon took him away. I heard later he couldn't remember anything about the flight. Couldn't remember his own name for a while. Combat fatigue, they called it. Shell shock in the old war. You'd see it in guys' eyes at the briefings. That 1,000-yard stare, that disconnect from reality. Some of them kept flying. Others were grounded, sent home or to easier assignments. I started having dreams. Not nightmares exactly, just dreams where I was flying, always flying, and I couldn't land. The fuel gauge would be on empty, but the runway would keep getting further away, or I'd be in a turning fight that went on forever, round and round until I woke up sweating and confused about whether I was in my bunk or in the cockpit. My hands started shaking. Not much, just a tremor when I wasn't concentrating. I'd be eating breakfast and notice my coffee cup rattling against the saucer. I'd be signing a form and see my signature waver. I never reported it. You didn't. Reporting something like that meant getting grounded, and getting grounded meant letting your squadron down. So you just pushed through, swallowed whatever was happening inside you, and flew the next mission. One morning, I was scheduled to fly with a new pilot, fresh from the States, on his very first combat mission. Kid couldn't have been more than 20. He asked me if I was scared. I told him no. I told him, you get used to it. I was lying. You never get used to it. You just get numb. I finished my tour in September 1953. Flew my 100th mission, packed my gear, caught a transport back to the States. They gave me a bunch of medals at some ceremony I barely remember. Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with multiple oak leaf clusters. I smiled for the photos, shook hands with the brass, said all the right things. But I hadn't really left Korea. Part of me was still up there, still turning and burning over the Yalu, still watching tracers arc past my canopy. The nightmares got worse at home. I'd wake up my wife, we'd gotten married right before I shipped out, thrashing in bed, shouting warnings that made no sense to her. Break right, 6 o'clock, watch your 6. She was patient at first, understanding. But after months of it, after I started sleeping in the guest room so I wouldn't wake her, things started falling apart. I couldn't explain it to her. How do you tell someone what it's like to fight at 600 miles per hour, where one mistake means death, where you see your friends die and you just keep flying? How do you explain the guilt of surviving when better pilots didn't? How do you describe the feeling of killing another human being, even when they were trying to kill you first? I tried going to work, normal civilian life, got a job as a sales representative, wore a suit and tie, drove to an office every day, but I felt like I was sleepwalking through it. Nothing seemed real, nothing seemed to matter. These people were worried about quarterly reports and vacation days while I'd been dodging bullets in a frozen sky half a world away. I started drinking, not all at once, just a beer or two after work to steady my hands, then a few more. Then I'd need a drink before work just to face the day. My wife left in 1956. Took the kids. We had two by then, though I was barely present for their lives. I don't blame her. I wasn't the man she'd married anymore. The Air Force kept calling, asking if I wanted to come back, re-up, fly again. Part of me wanted to. Up there, flying was the only time I felt like myself. The only time things made sense. But another part of me knew that if I went back, I'd never leave. Not really. I'd just be chasing that high until it killed me. I see the other pilots sometimes, the ones who made it home. We don't talk much. What is there to say? We all know what we did, what we saw, what we lost up there. We all carry the same ghosts. The Korean War gets called the Forgotten War now. People don't remember it the way they remember World War II. But I remember. I remember every mission, every dogfight, every face of every pilot who didn't come home. I remember the smell of jet fuel and gun oil, the feeling of G-forces crushing you into your seat, the sight of a MiG spinning down trailing fire. I'm 54 years old now, sitting in this interview talking about events that happened over 20 years ago. But in my mind, I'm still 23, still climbing into that Sabre, still heading north toward the Yalu. People thank me for my service sometimes when they find out I was in Korea. They call me a hero. I don't feel like a hero. Heroes are in the movies, riding off into the sunset after the credits roll. I'm just a man who went to war and came back, except I didn't really come back. Not all of me. The boy who climbed into that F-86 in 1952, full of confidence and naive dreams about aerial combat, he died somewhere over Mig Alley. What came home was something else. Something hollowed out and refilled with memories that won't fade, with the sound of machine guns and the sight of aircraft burning and falling, and the names of dead friends that I recite sometimes at night like a prayer. They say we won the air war over Korea. We achieved air superiority, protected the ground forces, shot down more of them than they shot down of us. Maybe that's true. But I think about that MiG pilot I shot down, drifting under his parachute toward the frozen ground. I think about Jimmy Kowalski's aircraft breaking apart in midair. I think about all of us, both sides, killing each other over a peninsula most Americans couldn't find on a map. And I wonder what we won exactly, what any of us won. The sky is still up there, blue and infinite and beautiful. Sometimes I look up and I can almost feel it, that sensation of flight, of freedom, of being untethered from the earth. But I don't fly anymore. Haven't been in a cockpit since 1953. I think if I went up there again, I might not come back down.